Something extraordinary happened in the lives of the people you're about to meet. Something of mystery that will, for one thing, reveal if you are a believer or a skeptic. Can our loved ones reach out to us from a world beyond? Do they sometimes come back after death with one last message? Well, there are millions of people who claim it has happened to them. A supernatural experience that has made their personal loss somehow more bearable. Tonight, Deborah Roberts brings you some of their stories, and I think you're going to find them fascinating.
Oh, Stevie was so much fun. He was a lively, very wonderful boy.
Dr. Newberry was probably the most interesting man I've ever met in my life. He was a wonderful human being.
I do feel like I was blessed to have Kimmy. I really was. You try to raise your kids where they're just so loving and all, and I think she really came out that way.
No one would question how deeply these people feel about the family they lost. But what you might have trouble believing is what they say happened after their loved ones were laid to rest.
I know what I saw. And she was standing right there in color. I mean, I saw her face, I saw her clothes.
Joanne Freeman is not alone. She's one of many who claim to have had some kind of contact with friends or relatives after they died. Their unusual stories are so compelling, they've now been documented in a new book called Hello from Heaven. Authors Bill and Judy Guggenheim call their experiences after-death communications.
We're speaking, or these experiences are speaking of a much larger spiritual universe, or heaven, or whatever you wish to call it. And our loved ones are trying to come back and say, yes, that does exist.
The Guggenheims insist that more people have had the experiences than you'd ever expect, including each of them. Bill, a former stockbroker, says he's certain he once heard his dead father's voice. And Judy says her grandfather came back to visit her long after he died. Convinced they were not alone, the divorced couple teamed up to find others who feel they've also been contacted by the world beyond.
How many people would you guess have had these experiences?
About 20% of the American population, 50 million American men, women, and children have had an after-death communication experience.
But if 50 million people have had these experiences, how come we don't hear about it every day? How come people aren't talking about it very openly and commonly?
People are afraid to be different. They're afraid of what will the neighbors think.
In their book, the Guggenheims changed the names of those who shared their experiences. But tonight, several of those people have agreed to go public with their stories.
There's something that's happening. I mean, something happened to me.
What happened to Sally Detterman, a Washington, D.C. attorney, began in 1980 when her 9-year-old son, Stevie, was diagnosed with leukemia.
They used the word leukemia, and it wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the illness that he had heard the word cancer. He very much associated the word cancer with dying. And he asked me then, was he going to die? Did he have that kind of cancer? And I said that he had a different kind of cancer from which most kids don't die, but some do.
With the same spirit that propelled him in soccer and swimming, Stevie fought the battle against cancer and chemotherapy, but ultimately he lost. Stevie was 12 when he died.
Even though I knew it was coming, I was still very, very sad. And then the reality of what you've lost hits you, and it's like this evil, wet thing.
One night, about 2 weeks after her son's death, she had a dream about Stevie.
In the dream, I started pounding on doors, walking down the hospital, trying to find a doctor who would tell me whether he was alive or dead. And then I woke up. And that ugliness hit, that evil black thing. And then I saw him standing next to the bed, and he said, "I am dead, Mom, but it's okay, I'm fine." And I've never seen him since. I don't know what it was. I don't know whether if someone else had been in the room with me, they would have seen it. All I can tell you is what it wasn't. It wasn't a night dream. I was awake. And it wasn't the daydream. I wasn't visualizing him. I wasn't focusing on having him come or any such thing. He just was there. And then he wasn't.
What happened to Sally is common, say the Guggenheims.
A lot of these experiences sound like they could just be people who are so overcome with grief that they want to hear something, they want to see something. How did you know these experiences were real?
They were awake, they were sober, they were not on medication.
It's when you hear the patterns of the experiences, and they're so similar, they fall into very tight patterns over and over and over again.
What kinds of things did you hear that you heard over and over again?
Such as the typical messages from the family member or friend who had died and come back. I'm fine, I'm okay, don't worry about me. Go on with your own life, don't grieve for me.
That's the message Tom Murray says he once received in the kitchen of his New Jersey home after his father-in-law, Dr. Graham Newberry, died of cancer. Unlike the rest of the family, Tom recalls that he was not overcome by grief.
My feeling was that had he lived, he would have suffered so, and I was very thankful that he didn't suffer long and that he was in a coma for a week and died.
Tom, a former White House journalist, considers himself a skeptic, so he was not prepared for what he would see the day after Dr. Newberry died.
What'd you see?
I saw my father-in-law. I saw him stand. I will not lose this because it was a profound sense of joy I saw too, I felt. He was standing in the corner and he communicated to me, I'm all right, tell them everything's fine, and tell them not to worry. And it was gone.
Sometimes our imagination and our hopes for what might happen can get the better of us.
Dr. Nicholas Humphrey is a psychology professor who's written a book about why people believe in things like after-death experiences. He has a theory that compares losing a loved one to losing a limb.
After somebody's had a limb amputated or lost it in an accident, even though it's physically gone, they still sometimes feel it's there because their mind, their brain, has a picture of the limb, has an idea of what it ought to be like, and after it's lost, they nonetheless can continue to create it in imagination, and it feels just as real as the original limb did. Now, in a way, when somebody loses somebody very close to them, it's like losing a limb, and the phantom of that person can continue to return to them just in the way a phantom limb can.
Judy, what about the scientists who say there is no scientific evidence that this happens?
There probably isn't any scientific evidence, but there's spiritual evidence, there's psychological and emotional evidence that these experiences have lasting healing effects on the experiencers. What more do we need? Can't we just accept it as being real?
In fact, Joanne Freeman is convinced that what happened to her 8 years ago was real. It was a Saturday night, and her 14-year-old daughter Kim was spending the night at a girlfriend's house. What Joanne did not know was that earlier that evening, Kim went for a ride with the girl's sister. Their car traveled down this road, went out of control, and crashed.
It was about 1 o'clock in the morning that the phone rang, and it was the dispatch office at the police station telling me that the police officer was at my front door. But I was thinking at the time that possibly I left my lights on in my car or something, because I had done that once before. So I proceeded to get up out of bed, and when I kind of was heading into the hallway there, I saw this vision, and it was Kimmy and her grandfather. And he had his arm around her, and they were just smiling, and Kimmy just looked so happy and just real peaceful looking at me. And he said, I've got her now, baby, and she's okay. And I thought, wait a minute. And I just kind of shook my head, and I thought, no, I'm dreaming. And I thought, no, I'm not dreaming. I'm in the hallway. How can I be dreaming?
Joanne answered the door and learned for the first time that Kim had been killed 3 hours earlier.
I think it cushioned the blow. I think it helped me deal with Kim's death. When you go through it and you go to a viewing and you say goodbye to your daughter in one way, and then you see her after the accident, she doesn't look the same. But see, I can look at her with how I saw her in the hallway. And that's helped me.
So she got that beautiful visual message before she had to receive that devastating blow of learning her daughter had just died.
But it's not just parents or family members who are reporting these so-called messages.
How's the baby doing today?
So did Kate Elliott, a nurse of 20 years. Here in the neonatal unit of the Jersey Shore Medical Center, she once cared for an infant she calls Baby Allen. On Christmas Day, 1982, the child died at the age of 3 months.
Would you say that you were especially bereaved or especially caught up in the emotion?
Not any more than any other neonatal intensive care nurse. In honesty, I have to say no.
But Kate had become attached to the child's mother. One night, the two had dinner together, spending an emotionally charged evening talking about the loss of the baby. Later, after Kate went to bed,
I had the most incredible experience. I felt that I went to a place. I don't even know that it would be accurate to call it a vision or a dream because it felt totally real to me. Extraordinary beauty. And it seemed as if there was a big garden with lots of babies playing in it. And in and amongst these babies, I recognized baby Allen. And he came to me and he communicated to me, thank you for taking care of my mom. You're really helping her, and you need to let her know that I'm very happy now and that everything is okay. It still has the power to move me 13 years later.
It sounds like what you had was just a dream, a strange dream.
I might almost buy that, except this experience was too real and too tangible for me to consider it having been, quote, just a dream.
You're a medical professional. Many medical experts would probably tell you there's some scientific explanation for what happened.
You know, in medicine, we're trained to think in scientific lines and to stay with our principles and theories. But I think that we may not be accounting for the fact that maybe our science has not caught up with every reality in the world or every possible reality in the world.
It's not up to us to prove that these are legitimate experiences or that these are real. That's in the heart of the beholder.
I think it was, her gift, her last way of saying I love you.
They're mysteries. And I don't have an explanation. I'm not sure any human being has the capability to understand the mysteries.
I must be strong.
They seem like very sensible people.
They are, and it sounds strange, but they're credible people.
What do you think about this?
Well, I approached this very skeptically, but after talking to a lot of these people who are professionals, many of them, I think something happened to them. It's just too hard to, it's difficult to dismiss it given that there were so many of them.
Did you get any clue about why it happens to some people and not others?
Well, I asked the Guggenheims that because there are so many people who say this has never happened to them. Their reply is that maybe you weren't open to it, that if you are not open to this kind of spiritual experience, it may never happen to you.
Did it appear to change the lives of these people substantially, you think?
Very much so. In fact, no matter what you believe about what happened to them, most of them seem to feel positive because of it. They report feelings of inner peace, about their lives, about death. They went on to help other people. If nothing else, it helped them.
Well, the experience seems to be real and different from dreams,
That's
whatever
right.
the origin of it.
That's what they say.
Thank you, Deborah.